Welcome back to Uncensored. For more on the situation in Israel, I'm joined now by the CEO and co-founder of the Daily Wire, Ben Shapiro's partner, Jeremy Boring. Jeremy, thank you very much indeed for joining me. I'm sorry we demoted you earlier to mere MD. You are the CEO and co-founder. You know Ben Shapiro better than anyone, really. I did a big interview with Ben, obviously, the other night, which went around the world and has sparked a big reaction, including from our guest, Bاسm Yusuf, who's still with us. First of all, you've been listening to Bاسm and what he's been saying. What's your response?
Well, first of all, I make it a point not to speak for Ben Shapiro. He's got a 20 IQ points on me and speaks for a living professionally, so he's much better prepared to defend himself. But as his business partner, as his best friend, I do feel like I have to respond to the things that Bاسm was just saying. First of all, the question of how many sons of bitches have to be killed in order to end this conflict, I suppose that the answer is as many of them as it takes. That doesn't mean that I or Ben or any decent person in their right mind is happy with the killing of civilians. I posted at the very beginning of this conflict that a woman or a child blown apart in Gaza is just as tragic as a Jewish baby killed in one of the settlements. That doesn't mean that Israel's actions and the actions of Hamas are morally equivalent. You know, the tragedy is the tragedy, but the moral equivalency is nonsense. If you entered Israel with the express purpose of targeting and murdering civilians with your own hands in cold blood, that is not comparable to Israel bombing targets in the Gaza Strip and killing civilians as a terrible, tragic consequence. War is terrible. War is an awful thing. That's why decent people don't lightly engage in war, and why Hamas should not have incited this war. You know, we can talk about the history of the Israeli conflict. I'm not a professional political commentator. I'm a CEO. I'm a screenwriter. And I'm certainly not Ben Shapiro. I'm not here to discuss the history of the Israeli-Palestinian conflict, but we all saw what happened on October 7th. And the idea that Israel was not going to react severely to that, or that Israel should not react severely to that, is ludicrous. And
Jeremy, let me ask you
that Ben Shapiro should be a moderating voice, that Ben Shapiro should be, saying, no, Israel should not respond in this situation, that's nonsense.
Let me ask you though, Jeremy, the question which I think is the big question. What is a proportionate response to that outrage on October the 7th, which is the worst attack on Jewish people since the Holocaust? What is proportionate? If it's true, as reports are suggesting tonight, that there may have been a hospital hit by an Israeli strike and up to 500 people or more have died, that would seem to me, if that is verified, and it's not verified yet, you know, we don't know exactly what has happened other than there's been a hit on this hospital. But if that is verified to have been an Israeli strike, that will strike many people as disproportionate.
Certainly. Well, first of all, I don't know what a proportionate response is or why we would want it. I suppose a proportionate response would be for 3,000 Israelis to go through the fence, gun down innocent Palestinian women and children, burn their bodies, burn them alive, take hostages, rape their women. No one wants a proportionate response. No moral person could possibly call for a proportionate response. The purpose of war is to defeat your enemy. The West has, in my lifetime, forgotten the purpose of war because the true cost of war is so terrible. The last time the West engaged in war and won it was World War II, and they did it through incredible brutality. They did it by bringing their enemies to heel. That is not a thing to That's not a thing to rah-rah about. That's not a thing to look forward to. As I said, all decent people should avoid war. But I think the sort of lie of the post-World War II, the post-war consensus lie, is that somehow war in which you kill a bunch of people and don't secure victory is morally superior to war where you do secure victory. I would say that the only way to morally justify a war is to win it. Otherwise, the very argument that brought you into the war, this enemy must be defeated, ends up being proven a lie. I mean, Afghanistan, I think America had every right to go into Afghanistan. The Taliban was harboring Osama bin Laden and al-Qaeda. Al-Qaeda flew planes into buildings in the United States, killed thousands of our citizens, brought the nation into untold agony, pain, and horror. America had every right morally to go in and destroy the Taliban and destroy al-Qaeda.
Yeah, but I would argue,
the Taliban now rules in Afghanistan. The war was not won.
But that's my point, actually. I've done a column about this tonight for The Sun here in the UK, which is I was editor of a newspaper when the Iraq war happened. I opposed it very aggressively as the editor of the paper. And And sadly, we were borne out by events. It was a complete disaster, the Iraq War, in my view. It was illegally contested, I think. And the consequences were appalling in terms of loss of life, 1 million people, in terms of ISIS being allowed to breed and create their merry hell around the world, in terms of complete dismantlement of Iraq itself as a functioning country. And I think Afghanistan, again, 20 years of attacking an enemy, which is now running the country again, seemed to me, again, to be kind of pointless. And I do wonder whether Israel, in its blind fury, which I completely understand, has thought through the consequences of actually launching a full air, ground and sea offensive into Gaza as to actually what happens at the end of that.
Well, I suppose Israel wasn't really given the opportunity to fully contemplate what the consequences of that action might be, because Israel didn't instigate this war. This war was instigated by a horrible terrorist attack on Israel. And a state is put in a position where it has to respond. Now, one might argue that the very fact that Israel has yet to actually launch their ground invasion means that they are actually making a calculation about what the cost will be, what victory looks like. Any rational person, any decent person can engage in a conversation about what is the appropriate response for Israel. Of course they can. But this sort of moral equivalency thing, I don't think is a sign of decency to engage in a conversation about moral equivalency.
Let me bring Bاسم back in. You've been listening to this, Bاسم. What's your response to what Jeremy's been saying?
I'm sorry, I didn't catch the gentleman's name.
It's Jeremy Boring. He's the chief executive of the Daily Wire and co-founder with Ben Shapiro of the Daily Wire.
Hi, Jeremy. Please say hello to Ben Shapiro, and please tell him that I do think he is the smartest person to ever walk the earth. Thank you so much. So, as response to Jeremy, I agree with everything you said. I mean, what is disproportionate? I mean, he just used the examples from Second World War and America, showing that civilian casualty is, I mean, I heard his voice. He was very sad, and as he was telling us, it is so inevitable to kill so many civilians because it's something that we cannot avoid. I hear the sadness in his voice, and I know that it's a very difficult decision to kill all of these civilians, because that's for a higher cause, and I understand. But my question, I have two questions. The question is, how can you justify the killing in the West Bank where Hamas does not exist? And if the disproportionate response during over all of these years have actually worked, what will be new this time that did not happen before? I just want to. That was my question.
Okay,
that was my question.
I'm gonna.
Okay. So now, if I ask the question, can I say something on my side?
Well,
a little bit personal?
Bاسم, with respect,
a little bit personal.
Bاسm, with respect, I gave you half the show to have your side. Jeremy's had a lot less time. I'm going to have to.
You want
move
me to
on.
leave?
Bاسm,
or do you want me to stay?
I'm going to have to let you go because we've been on air with you for 40 minutes.
Oh, okay.
Now.
Bye bye.
But listen,
bye.
I'd like to talk to you again, and thank you for joining the program. I appreciate it.
Oh, by the way, my wife's family is all right, and they sent us a house. It's bombed. It's beautiful. It's going to be a good like Halloween theme. So
well, I'm very sorry for what your family are going through in Gaza, and I mean that very sincerely.
By the way, I don't know. I don't know I don't know him. By the way, I haven't actually met them. They didn't even come to my wedding. They couldn't because they are stuck in Gaza. Okay. And she never saw them because, Gaza is not a destination.
Bاسm, as I say,
we hear their voices, and it's they die. It's fine. It's fine.
Bاسm, I wish your family all the very best. Thank you for joining me. I appreciate it.
I don't. Thank you.